Rick said last week that the church probably needs a smarter pastor than what he is, so let me introduce your new pastor. I've been waiting all week just to say it. Well, it's good to see each one of you this morning. I've been up here doing this in this place for about 23 years. Brother Rick started a biographical series on various people of the Bible a few weeks ago. And so he came to a person that few people know nothing about. Now, let me kind of work this a little bit. How many of you here really know anything about Barnabas? I didn't think so. So here's kind of the way preachers work. And the deacons, my deacons used to be absolutely terrified. Will still is. Terrified of me. Pat runs every time he sees me. Jake's not smart enough yet to figure out what's going on. So when I walk up, I say, "Hey, what have you done?" And they'll say, "Nothing." I said, "Good. You just volunteered for something." So Brother Rick came up the other day and he said, "Would you like to preach these?" So I said, "Sure, that'd be great." And I knew he was doing this, these biographies on all these great people of the Bible. So honest to God, this was going through my mind. Let's see. I know he's going to be speaking about Joseph, one of the greatest men in the history of the Bible. He was a young man who was a slave boy in Egypt and became the prime minister of the most powerful nation on the earth at the time. And then I thought about Noah. Noah was a righteous man. In fact, he was really the only righteous man in the world at the time, and there were several million people. And I thought, I could preach about that. There's Moses. Who couldn't speak about Moses? My goodness, there's just all kinds of stuff about him. And then Joshua, the one that God chose to lead the children of Israel over the Jordan River into the Promised Land and capture that land of promise for God's people. I'm thinking, these are all good things to preach. And then, of course, there's Daniel, one of the great men of the Bible. And I mean, the list just goes on. And he says, Barnabas. And I'm thinking, Barnabas? The only thing I really know about Barnabas is that him and Paul got in a fight. And their ministry split up. So, let's pray. I'll see you later. Not really. He's a great man of God. And I think as we unfold this, you're going to see what I'm talking about. By the way, Brother Rick, I'm not going to be picking on you today either, so I just want you to know that. So you can relax. He doesn't get to relax too often in Sunday morning because preachers have got people that they pick on. Like I like to pick on Sparrow and Bill Hennings and whoever else that I can, think of at the time. But the first time that we see Barnabas is in Acts chapter 4:36. And it was a new church. The church had just started. And of course, new churches typically have needs, but new churches have lots of needs. And let me read this to you real quick here. And I'm not going to be reading a lot of scripture today because I'm just going to be covering a lot of stuff, but I'm going to be making reference to it. But 4:36 says this. This was Luke as he wrote it. He said, "Nor was there anyone among them who lacked, because they had been taken up offerings. For all who were possessors of lands of houses sold them and brought them the proceeds of the land of the things which they sold. And laid them at the apostles' feet. They distributed to each as anyone had need." And Joseph, and it goes on to say that Joseph sold his property. Well, Joseph, by the way, was his Hebrew name, and his Greek name became Barnabas. So this is the only time you're going to see him really called Joe in the New Testament. You'll see it Barnabas hereafter. So anyway, he was just a generous guy. He had a great heart for the early church. He was a Levite, and he sold his property. We think he was wealthy. We think he gave a lot of money to the church. And so that was kind of the introduction of who he was. And by the way, anyone that has ever started the church can realize some of the things that this early church, now they faced obviously some things that we've never faced here in this country starting the church. They had incredible persecution. In fact, the church was finally pushed out because many people were being killed. They were pushed out into Antioch, and Antioch became really the center of the church operation because of the incredible persecution that was happening in the nation of Israel. And so churches have a very difficult time starting. And as I was doing this, and I was watching as Barnabas and Paul were going throughout the world, the civilized world, and they were evangelizing and starting churches and naming elders and stuff like that, I really began thinking about a lot of the things that has happened here at Grace Fellowship Church. Grace Fellowship Church had their first meeting on March 7th, 1993, which was 23 years ago. It is true, that was the first day. But it was actually, and it started at the Park District in New Lenox. And the first day, I think I've shared this with you before, that the sermon was so great, that first Sunday that we had. Bill and Mary Hennings was there. They will stand up and testify if you ask them. We're not going to ask them. And it was so great, we had 21 people our first service, and next week we had 16. So it didn't work out that great. I'm not sure. I think maybe the sermon had something to do with it. But anyway, as I said, I bring this up because I just began going back through my mind over several things about the start of Grace Fellowship Church. But Grace Fellowship Church really started, and I like this last song that the team, isn't our team great? I mean, our worship team. You know, they every once in a while they say they need singers, so I always walk up there and said, you know, and they look at me and they just, you know, go like that. They won't say anything one way or the other, but I know that they never asked me up to sing. But we started in the summer. Grace Fellowship Church started formulating in the mind and heart of Bob Moreland. And it was laid there by the Lord himself. And Jan and I had come home from Kansas City to visit our family here. I was pastoring a church down there, as I've shared with you, and I've shared this story. It was a very difficult ministry. It was a hard ministry. And a ministry that I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever fought so hard in my life for something as I did that. I used to get in my car of a night, and I would drive around an area, probably a 20 or 30 mile square mile just around the church, saying, Lord, we need to build a church here, Lord. We need to do this. Lord, you need to bless this church. You need to bring people into this church. And we went door to door and door to door, and just worked like I don't think I've ever worked. And it had very little fruits. It was tough. It was really hard. But little did I know that God was using that in preparation of Grace Fellowship Church in Mokena. And so anyway, we came home on furlough, leave, whatever you want to call it. And I was walking down side street there in New Lenox, very quiet, and I was very tired. Being in the city, I don't know, you people that have been raised in the city, it's very noisy. And when I become tired, I become very cognizant of the noise around me. It's just like this. Well, here it was very quiet. So I'm walking down the road, and the Lord, and just not really thinking about anything, and all of a sudden, this voice it was silent. There was nothing, just kind of come into my heart. My mind said, I want you to come up here and start a church. And I stopped because it was very real. It was very clear. And I said, no, Lord, I'm not going to do that. I have a church in Kansas City. Why would I want to leave my church in Kansas City and come up here and start another one? But I'm not going to do this. So anyway, that kind of took care of that, at least I thought. But that was in the summer of 1990. And for this next several months, the Lord kept saying, by the way, I'm not going to let leave you alone about this. And my wife, as I shared with you, she came up, she said it's time, and I knew what she was talking about, and I told her to mind her own business. My kid comes home from college, he walks up and he said it's time, and I'm thinking, they must be co-conspiring here to come up with those same words. They weren't, they hadn't talked. But they both recognized something that was happening. So I went back, I resigned my church, and then I began laying the groundwork. We got here in the fall of '92, in September. And I began laying the groundwork for Grace Fellowship Church. There's a lot of work involved. What is the church? What's the new church going to believe? And so I thought, being the founding pastor here, I'm going to write up a constitution. I'm going to give us direction in terms of what we believe, because we're going to be bringing a lot of people in that don't know what they believe. And so I did a constitution. And that was a lot of work. And then we had to get a place to meet. And then we had to come up with have enough faith that God was going to provide the money week to week to pay what the rent was over there. We had to do that. And I started a Bible study. There were 8 people though. Bill and Mary Hennings was, by the way, they were at the first Bible meeting. They've been with the church ever since then. For over 23 years, they've been a part of it. And Bill and Mary, one of the things that they did that I'm not even sure that they really understand, but one of the things that they did, I didn't have a job, and so they provided a place for me to work there that over the next several years actually provided a small income for me. They provided that platform for me to be able to do that. I didn't take a salary from the church, from Grace Fellowship Church, for the first couple of years. We couldn't afford it. And what God had provided through Bill and Mary Hennings' agency up there, their insurance agency, helped, and plus my wife worked, and we were able to survive. But God had called me to start this, and I didn't want to do it. I can tell you, I didn't want to. It wasn't a matter of faith. It was a matter that I just didn't want to. I had a church already. I didn't want to leave my church. But he said, I want you to go, and he wouldn't leave me alone. And let me say something to you. That song that we were singing just a minute ago, if you tell God, if God calls your name, and he will speak to you in terms of ministry, pastor, whatever, maybe just a ministry leader here in Grace Fellowship Church, God will speak to you in a lot of different ways. And sometimes it's in the stillness of the night. He will speak to you. I want you to do that. And let me tell you something. If he calls your name to do that, you better be obedient. But don't never say, Lord, I will follow you. I will do what you will have me to do, unless you absolutely mean it. Because he's going to call your name when you say those words. Because this is very serious business to God. Everything that we do here, everything that we do, someone that comes in and sweeps the floor, someone that comes in and sings a song, the people that there, Brother Rick preaching on Sunday morning, the teachers and stuff, all of those things have eternal consequences, by the way. And God knows what he's doing when he calls out to someone to serve in a Sunday school class, or someone to come here and to be involved in some kind of ministry. God has a plan, and he has a purpose, and it is eternal. Everything we do here is eternal. And he's serious about it. So if you say, God, I will go, I will follow wherever you send me, you better be prepared. By the way, be prepared. Jan and I are getting ready to leave. It's difficult, I can tell you. The church becomes kind of like your child after a while. I know sometimes you just want to walk away from your kids and leave them. And by the way, I felt that way several times about Grace Fellowship Church. I've quit here so many times I couldn't even count. But I couldn't go. But we're getting ready to leave tomorrow. We're going to Texas. And somebody says, well, why are you retiring? I said, retiring? We've just gotten started. And I really mean that. I'm looking forward. I'm excited. I'm not excited about leaving Grace, but it's time. God has spoken to me. He's spoken to the church. It's time, and I understand that. But all we're doing is we're shifting gears. We're going to Texas tomorrow. We're going to look into the chaplaincy ministry of some of the big RV parks down in southern Texas. And I can tell you that what they're doing is they're looking for people to come in and hold services on Sunday morning, but I don't look at it quite that way. I look at the fact when you walk into one of those places and there's hundreds and sometimes thousands of people, there's a lot of lost people there that need the Lord. And I'm not interested in going down and just filling a spot on Sunday morning. That's not my MO to do that. And I can't do that. I just can't. I look at this as an incredible opportunity to be involved right up to the last breath that I take. The very last breath. In fact, I've been praying, Lord, help me to love you, honor you, and obey you, and that I serve you all the days of my life. I'm not ready to retire. I don't think preachers, Brother Rick, I'm going to put you in a spot when you become 90 years old, you shouldn't retire. Why would you want to retire? To get a job at Walmart as a greeter? By the way, that's not a slam against Walmart greeters. I just want you to know that. But as I was looking at Barnabas this week and the incredible influence that Barnabas had, the impact that Barnabas had, his name has been mentioned 29 times in the Bible, and most of us in here don't know a thing about him, but Barnabas has had an impact upon Christianity from 2,000 years ago right through today as I stand here and speak. And we don't know much about him. We don't know much about him at all. He was an incredible man of God. I need to start looking at my sermon here, by the way. I don't know why. But he was a friend of Paul, and he was a mentor. Paul, as you know, and you've heard us talk about, and you've read about, is that Paul hated Christians, and he looked at his godly duty and the duty to his country, the nation of Israel, God's nation, to rid this nation of this new threat called Christianity. They were committing blasphemy. They were going around these Christians and they were telling people, come, by the way, we have discovered a Messiah who is God in the flesh. Come and follow because he is the Savior. And to them, anybody that claimed to be God, that was blasphemy, punishable by death. And so Paul was on the road to Damascus. And you can go back and read it. It's John chapter 9. He was going down the road. He had papers in his hand. He was going to Damascus to arrest people, persecute them, bring them back, put them in jail. He was responsible for the death of some of the early Christians, and he got saved. Well, he gets up to Damascus, and he began preaching. Well, the Christians up there were scared to death of him. They wanted nothing to do with him. Paul goes off for 3 years into Arabia. He studies. He comes back. And he gets up there, back to Damascus. He has problems, so he goes back to Jerusalem. When he gets to Jerusalem, and they tell him, or they say, we don't want anything to do with this guy. This guy's a murderer of Christians. We know who he is. We don't trust him. And upsets Barnabas, a man with incredible integrity and character, a man that had an audience with the Christians of that day. And he said to them, by the way, this guy's okay. I have spent some time with him, and he indeed has received Christ as his Lord and Savior. And Barnabas recognized, not only did he introduce him and give assurance to the Christians at Jerusalem, this man is not here to kill you, to persecute you, but he is here to serve with you. But Paul recognized something incredible within this man Barnabas. Barnabas recognized something incredible. That's what happens when you get old. Most of you're old, you need to pick up what I said. Anyway, Barnabas recognized something in Paul. He had some qualities about him that was unique and unusual. And that's the way that some of you are here. God has, by the way, gifted some of you different than he has others. Some of you he has made movers and shakers. And by the way, if you're able to do that in the business world, If you can do that there, then you can do that here. You can do that here. If you can have an impact out there, then you can have an impact like that in your church as well. And in the kingdom. I think a lot of times that too many Christians, our gifts and our talents and our abilities that God has blessed us with go unused. I'm convinced of that. So anyway, Barnabas recognized something incredible this man. So he began mentoring him. As you read the Bible, as you read through Acts, you'll see Barnabas and Paul, they went here. Barnabas, Paul, they went there. Barnabas and Paul, they were here in Antioch. They were over to Ephesus. They were here. They were preaching the gospel all the time. As this was going on, Paul is being mentored by this great man, Barnabas, that we know very little about. Well, they had a little bit of a fight. Brother Rick said I could preach till 2 o'clock if I wanted to. You know, I keep trying to tell these young preachers, if you got a sermon 50 minutes, cut it in half, you got 2 sermons. Then you don't have to work as hard. They haven't realized that yet. But Paul and Barnabas, they're getting ready. Paul said to Barnabas, he said, let's go on another missionary journey. This would have been the second missionary journey. Paul was on 3, and the first one was with Barnabas. So he said, let's go on this missionary journey, Barnabas. And Barnabas said, that's great, let's take John Mark with us. And Paul said, that's not going to happen. You remember the first time that we took John Mark and he abandoned us? It's not going to happen. So the Bible said that they split. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. Paul picked up Silas. He became Paul's partner in ministry. And then John Mark and Barnabas, they take off. And we don't hear a lot about them. But we know that there was some mentoring going on there. Because John Mark is the one that wrote the book of Mark, the first gospel of the Bible. Who mentored him? Silas. Or not Silas, but Barnabas. I got too many names flying around there. And so, what is the purpose of this message today? What's the purpose of talking about Barnabas? Is because that we can never understand or never know maybe fully and all the implications of the work that we do mentoring and working with other people. When Brother Rick walked in here, him and Janine 15 years ago, to get married, who on earth would have ever thought that one day he's going to be the lead pastor of Grace Fellowship Church?